Hi, ay, 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 di-di-di-di-di-di-di, hi, ay, hi, ay, di-da-na-na-na, di-di-da-da-na-na-na-na, yan-ay, di-di-da-na, di-di-da-da-na-na, hi, ay, di-da-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na-na-na, yan-ay, di-di-da-na, di-di-da-na, na-na-na. Hi, ay, 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 and I, da, 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 ay, da, 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 da. Hi, ay, ay, da, na, 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 da, 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 na, 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 and I, da, 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 na, 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 na. Hi, ay, da, na, 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 and I, da, 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 na, 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 na. Hey ya 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 na da 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 ya ya itty da 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 ya 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 itty da 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 da. Shalom, shalom. Happy Tuesday from snowy Toronto to rainy Scottsdale, Arizona. We're all here. We're all here in our weather predicaments. and I know we're not traveling very far these days anyways, so we can all enjoy the wetness and the dryness together. Good to see everyone. Let's start with a little poll. Let's see how we're polling today. Let's see if our polls are accurate. It's because American polls are not always accurate, as you may have learned. But these polls are perfectly accurate. How great are the Jews? How great are the Jews? Number one, the Jews are the greatest. Number two, I don't know if the Jews are the greatest, but we are quite special. Number three, Jews are no better or worse than anyone else. Number four, I'm not very proud of the Jews and feel we're not where we should be. Oh, can you guys not hear me so great? Am I not coming in good? I am coming in good.
A bit muffled.
A little bit muffled?
You were fine at the beginning and now the sound dropped off.
Huh. Thank you for the heads up there.
Did you unplug anything?
Is that any better?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, please let me know again if there's a problem.
Whoop.
Not good again? Wow. Wow. Okay, hold on. What if I move this closer? Is that better?
Yes.
Far away. Is that perfect or not perfect? Not perfect. Let me try a different
Still
way.
a little bit low. I can hear Eileen clearly.
How's this one?
Better.
This one better? Like
Better.
Perfect? Are we perfect?
Better.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
never
I can-
perfect, but
I mean,
Thank you.
I can hear everyone else much better than I can hear Shmuly.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, is that, how about now?
good.
That's a little
Better.
better.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there we go.
These things are junk. You buy these headsets for, they get the good Amazon reviews, but I don't know why they don't work for me. Okay, so here's your last option. I'm not very proud of the Jews and feel we're not where we should be. Okay, so take 20 seconds and cast your vote. I know these are hard to pick just one sometimes, but let's see what we got. Give it another 10 seconds. I know this is complex, and we'll take a thought or two on this after we have the results. Okay, AJ, do we have the results?
Yeah, let's end the poll.
Okay.
Here we go. Oh, here we go.
The Jews are the greatest, 22%. I don't know if the Jews are the greatest, but we're quite special, 56%. Jews are no better or worse than anyone else, 11%. And I'm not very proud of the Jews and feel we're not where we should be, 11%. Okay, anyone want to explain why they voted how they did? Anyone want to share?
I just feel like, there's good Jews, there's bad Jews. I mean, For every Bernie Madoff, there's a Shmuly Yanklowitz. So,
Well, geez, if I could be the opposite of Madoff, if it says that at my funeral, this guy was the opposite of Madoff. I'll take it. I'll take it. Thank
well,
you.
I meant it as two real extremes, but
Thank you.
never,
That's nice.
we have good, we have bad, and that's throughout history. Jews were
thank
given the chance and we rebelled and we didn't do what we should. And you look at kings and you want to, hide your head, but we have the potential to be great, but sometimes we just don't make it.
I think the fact that we're embarrassed by Bernie Madoff speaks well for us.
Okay, good point, Francine. Thank you.
Hi.
Yes,
Hi.
Cheryl.
Hi. I was the one that said I'm not very proud right now. And I think part of it is because of the Abba Budaya story yesterday. That was one thing. And then historic, just what's happened, the Jews, how the Jews have behaved. We do great things, but right now, I would say just right now, I'm not very proud, and I feel that we're not where we should be.
Great. One more person?
I would say that there's a danger in thinking you're too special. So I think that the humility component of saying, we are no more special than anyone else is important to remember, because I think everybody thinks that they're special in whatever they believe. So we have many important and I think amazing tools for self-examination and for tikkun olam, but I don't think we should think that we are the only people with those.
Great. If you have more thoughts, put them in the chat over there, anyone who didn't speak yet. And I think it's a fascinating question. How do we educate our children or our grandchildren to both be proud to be a Jew, that's something special and unique, but also to be humble and respectful and tolerant and potentially even pluralistic? And how do we balance also, celebrating the great things coming out of our community while also holding accountable and being embarrassed by the parts that are not positive? And also, some of us like to think more about Judaism than Jews. Do the Jews represent Judaism, or is Judaism something beyond peoplehood? Many people think that religion is lived through peoplehood, and Judaism is only as good as Jews live it in mass. And others think that the institution of religion and the thought that is eternal or at least millennia old transcends peoplehood. So lots to think about there, So friends, let's go forward. Thank you for opening up. As in the previous melachot on the theme, we are still concentrated on hides in this malacha of Memacheik, the 30th malacha, smoothing or scraping. The hides in the Mishkan needed to be scraped to remove any hair and to be smoothed out. Consequently, activities to accomplish a smoothing of any kind fall within the scope of this malacha. A modern example of such an activity would be sanding. Today, many people talk about using a bar of soap or creams or ointments or toothpaste as it relates to the malacha. As is typical, it doesn't apply to actions taken in regards to food or eating. So why is it we want things to be smooth? Smooth objects are pleasant to touch, and touching is such a profound human sense. While it would seem that touching would be a major locus for mitzvot observance, since we interact with objects daily, a good portion of the mitzvot are connected to the sense of hearing. What are examples of mitzvot with hearing? Think about prayer, or think about listening to the Torah reading. Consider that the most central Jewish prayer is called Hear, Shema. Some mitzvot have to do with the sense of sight. Think about the mitzvah to make an etrog beautiful. Regarding sight, Isaiah prophesied, your eyes will see your master. Some have to do with the sense of smell. Think about smelling the spices at Havdalah. The human spiritual potential regarding smell is made clear right at the beginning of the Torah. God breathed into his nostrils the soul of life. right? Life or the soul has to do with the nose and the sense of smell. And the rabbis taught that smell was maintained as a particularly pure and spiritual sense because it was the only one that didn't benefit from the chet in the Gan Eden, from the sin in the Garden of Eden. Some mitzvot deal totally with the sense of taste, such as eating matzah on Pesach, for example. But what mitzvot are involved in the sense of touch? Well, maybe none, but perhaps all mitzvot relate in some way to the sense of touch, because in order to perform every mitzvah, we must appreciate the smooth and seamless relationship between our intention to perform that mitzvah and the real world that we must inhabit in order to perform any mitzvah. Something that is a minhag, wearing tefillin or tzitzit. In tefillin, we touch and kiss, or think about kissing the mezuzah. These are only customs, not mitzvot. But it is interesting that this sense of touch, in many ways, is yes. And Cheryl reminds us of Peru or Vu, to be fruitful and multiply. Very much has to do with touch. So yes, as when it comes to sexual relations, there's most certainly touch involved. But if you were in our class on marital intimacy yesterday with Noam Sion, he talked about how in some Hasidic circles, the wearing tzitzit or wearing other garments to reduce touch, which might be an anathema or counterintuitive to us in the West or liberal circles. Consider how the Havdalah service, the weekly transition from Shabbat, places emphasis on reawakening our senses to serve God. Havdalah inspires us to be spiritually actualized in this physical world. The blessings progress from the most physical to the most sublime. First, we start with the sense of taste, with the blessing over wine, requiring the wine to touch the mouth. The second blessing on the spices, regarding the sense of smell, doesn't necessitate physical touch, only proximity. The third blessing over the sight of the light is even more subtle and can be experienced from a distance. Lastly, the fourth blessing of Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol is about the intellectual capacity of discernment, the most abstract of all, which does not seem to involve touch at all, although we can only discern the world and its meaning if we are in touch with it. This comes, by the way, this explanation comes from the Kaf Chaim, from the Rashbats. One of the easy ways, if you forget the order of Havdalah in the moment, is you think about going up the face, right? You drink with the mouth, then you smell with the nose, and then you see the light with the eyes, right? But the Rashbats here explains it's also about the physical touch versus the sublime, right? The first bracha on Borei Pri Hagafen is something that is tasted. It's physically encountered. Then the smell, you don't need to touch the spices. You just bring it close to your nose and you can smell in a close proximity. And then the light, even if the candle was across the room, you experience the light from a distance. And then the fourth bracha of Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, of intellectual discernment. And so as we make Havdalah, moving from the spiritual Shabbat to the physical world of the other days, we also move from the spiritual and to the more sublime to the more physical, as part of that Havdalah experience, the Rashbats explains. But just because touch is so physical, is it necessarily superficial? Deepak Chopra. You don't normally think you're going to go from the Rashbats to Deepak Chopra, right? But Deepak Chopra writes, more than anything, love is a deep sense of spiritual connection, of being touched, moved, and inspired to heights beyond our normal limits. It is a connection with a deep fundamental truth that runs through all of life and connects us together. Love makes the mundane sacred so that it is cared for and protected. When we lose our sense of connection with all life, we have lost the sacred and we no longer care for and protect that which nourishes us. What does it mean when we say, I'm so touched by that? I'm so touched by what you've said. I mean, literally, it means that I'm having a physiological, sensational experience, a sensory experience with what's happened. I'm so touched by that, right? It's not just that, thank you very much, that's very nice, or that was very moving intellectually. I'm touched by what you've done, meaning I'm physically experiencing on a hormonal, on a sensory level. I'm very touched by that. And the power of love to be touched, to be moved on a deep level. The late poet Amos Oz, it's always weird to say late when someone's passed away so recently. Amos Oz lived from 1939 to 2018, so he passed just about 2 years ago. Waiting for the next slide. Wrote a touching poem about what it means to touch and be touched, to change and be changed. How many of you ever heard him speak in person or ever heard him? He's okay, or read one of his books? Okay, the land of Israel is not a museum of God. No place is a museum of God. No person and no inanimate object is a thing of worship. Wow. It is permissible to both touch and change these things on the condition that you yourself are prepared to be touched and changed. Wow. The condition is love. I know it is impossible to educate to love. You cannot educate someone to love the land, nor can you educate someone to love the scenery. With love, you can infect someone else. Sometimes love can be awakened, sometimes, but not with a strong hand, not with an outstretched arm, and not with burning anger. There he's drawing on Exodus, of course. Rather, through an approach of mutuality, you come to a place, a hill, the desert, a spring, a house. You change it and make your mark upon it, but it also to be open and give it to the opportunity to leave its mark on you. To leave its mark on you. And so here he's talking about that to be to touch, you need to be willing to be touched. To love, you need to be willing to be loved. And here he's dealing with the land, but something more profound as well, about what it means to change someone and be willing to be changed, what it means to teach someone and be willing to be taught, what it means to open up experiences of mutuality. Our Arizona Jews for Justice fellows are going to encounter the homeless on Thursday with our team leader, Eddie, our great team leader, Eddie Chavez Calderon. And what does it mean? We don't go there to reach out an arm, to help, to save. We go there in mutuality. Yes, we have different things to offer, right? But we go there with respect. We go there in a sense to change, but be changed, to help and be helped, not arriving. People know if you're arriving to be a savior, if you're arriving to be a healer, or if you realize the mutuality, the respect that comes with an encounter and bring such a humility to that space. It's going to be a short sharing today, so we're almost through already. But here's our next poem from Ravindra Kumar Karnani, who is a contemporary Indian poet. Ravindra Kumar Karnani, translating a moving old Hindu poem, shares how we long to be physically touched by God, but know not what that would feel like. She writes, "The child whispered, 'God, speak to me.' And a meadow lark sang. The child did not hear. So the child yelled, 'God, speak to me!' And the thunder rolled across the sky, but the child did not listen. The child looked around and said, 'God, let me see you.' And a star shone brightly, but the child did not notice. And the child shouted, 'God, show me a miracle!' And a life was born, but the child did not know." Slide. So the child cried out in despair, "Touch me, God, and let me know you are here." Whereupon God reached down and touched the child, but the child brushed the butterfly away and walked away unknowingly. Would we ever know if we were touched by God? Heinz Kohut, the developer of the field of self-psychology, wrote, "The inner world cannot be observed with the aid of our sensory organs. Our thoughts, wishes, feelings, and fantasies cannot be seen, smelled, heard, or touched. They have no existence in physical space, and yet they are real, and we can observe them as they occur in time. Through introspection in ourselves and through empathy, i.e., vicarious introspection in others. Friends, we are physical beings gifted with powerful senses, but we also transcend our physicality. To understand ourselves and others, we must go beyond the sensory level. The malacha of Memacheik reminds us of how much we value the physical experience of touch, and smooth touch in particular. And yet we are reminded that the physical senses can open the soul. And at the same time, we recognize that the most sublime dimensions of human experience are indeed not sensory at all. Okay, let's move to gallery view. Okay, shalom, friends. Okay, so let's open up the floor. That was a shorter one today. I'd love to hear from you.
If I can address physical touch, because I don't know if you've been locked down there. We're on another lockdown, but really since March, it's been separated at least 6 feet from other people, wear a mask, etc. So I just live with a cat. So I can't tell you how much I miss a hug, you know? It's just, even when we were allowed to see other people and like meet in a coffee shop outdoors, which ended in October, you know, I still couldn't hug my friends. And a lot of my friends who have grandchildren just say that the worst thing is not being able to see their grandchildren, especially hug their grandchildren. So I think physical touch is a very, very human need. And it elicits, like, you know, in some cases love, but also a sense of security that you just don't get otherwise.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And so, you know, let's think about that for together for a minute before we move on, because I think you're absolutely right. And to take the most drastic case, when you are visiting someone who is sick in the hospital, I mean, obviously pre or post COVID, if there ever is a post COVID, I guess we sort of mean, you know, post this stage of COVID. We know that what you want to do in general is touch the person. People who are in hospital beds, not to mention hospice, long for touch. You want to hold a hand. You want to, if the relationship is right, you know, rub someone's forehead. You know, in fact, in Hilchot Bikur Cholim, in the Jewish traditions around visiting the sick, you want to physically help them, whether it means sweep the room or rub their feet or whatever the case is. That the power of touch, and when someone is in a vulnerable space, like a hospital, is very, very important. But even outside of the hospital, what Lauren is saying there, our physical longing for touch and the need that gives us and a sense of security. So why do you think that is? If you were playing God for a moment, designing the humanity, why would it be that we would design human beings to need touch? Why would it be that our psychological sense of security is so connected with being held and holding?
I don't think it's just human beings, though. When you look at
yes,
animals,
yes.
When you look at animals, I mean, they just, you know, it's the same thing. The animals want to be touched. They want to touch each other.
Yes.
But I also think I think I don't know anything more about it than the title of the program, the television show called "Touched by an Angel."
And I loved that when I was a kid. Yes.
Okay, so I really don't know what it's about, but it always evoked kind of a very Christian image to
Yes,
me,
yes.
actually. That I mean, reminiscent of the poem you just read about the child who didn't, who didn't recognize when God was really touching him, like physiologically or spiritually or whatever. So I just wanted to comment on those couple things.
Thank you so much for that. And just two things to pick up on there. By the way, what was the name of that famous actor in that show, Touched
I
by an
don't.
Angel? Anybody remember?
There's another one now starring Ted Danson about something about he's in heaven. It's like he's that's the only thing I can think of, but I don't remember who was in that show.
Okay, so just looking up, it said starring Roma Downey, Della Reese, John Dye, Valerie Bertinelli. That doesn't ring a bell for me totally. In any case,
Okay.
I remember so clearly as a child watching that show, and it definitely had Christian overtones. But I remember this fellow. It would start or end with him walking into the sunset. In any case, so thank you for that. And you're right. It's not just humans, Cheryl. It's all of the animal kingdom. And just looking at my son, my 2-year-old, he always wants the nurse. He all of his sense of security and his like emotional stability, not all of it, but you get what I mean. So much of his sense of stability and emotional security is about nursing. And when I'm home with him and my wife is not, he is always asking to nurse. And it's just, it's unbelievably powerful. I mean, he doesn't need the milk, I mean, he's 2.5 years old, but he needs the warmth. He needs the connection. He needs the breast on his cheek. And it is just so incredibly powerful. And then we think we transcend that. Okay, I'm not 2 anymore. I don't need to nurse, but we actually, maybe we don't transcend that. That need for that physical closeness is so powerful. So thank you. Yes.
I wanted to add that there have been studies of children who were in homes and actually lost the will to live because they were not touched. It's that important for a child's growth to have the touch and the security that the touch evokes.
Yes. Thank you for that. And, touch is, this is something that I've tried to navigate over the years because I grew up in a world where everyone touched each other a lot. And then I went into the Haredi world in my own experience, into the ultra-Orthodox world, which had a strict Shomer Negia idea where men touch each other a lot. A very huggy culture, a very touchy culture, and yet you don't touch any women, right? Even a man touching his wife in a lot for a lot of times, and then that I bridged into this world of what we moved into a Me Too world, and thank God in the Me Too movement we realized that a lot of men in the workplace used touch in ways they found innocent, but women found to be either abusive at worst, at slightly worst, offensive, at slightly less worse, excuse me, crossing a boundary, at slightly less worse, a power dynamic, and in other cases, just slightly awkward. Now, many women I know had no problem if someone they worked with put a hand on his shoulder, gave them a hug in the workplace, whatever the case is. I mean, things that we would generally consider to be, that seem to be innocent, and others who feel like any touch crosses a boundary. And so I know there's a lot of other things to talk about, but I do want to raise a question around this, around how do we think about touch in our community and in the workplace in ways that are both affectionate and respectful, and that might cross boundaries. I have erred on the heavily sensitive side on this, which is to say, in a public gathering, there's a banquet dinner, and the norm is to give a hug. Okay, you give a hug, but when it comes to a meeting or something like that, to err on a more cautious side. But I'm curious to hear from others. What's your experience with touch and boundaries?
If I can say something again,
Yeah,
just in
please.
my work life, somehow you know if the guy's being creepy or not. I mean, no, seriously, I don't know if the other women will
Yeah.
agree with me. I mean, I had one boss who was really creepy. And just even the way he would touch my shoulder or he'd try and rub my neck, that was creepy. Whereas, I had other guys who were colleagues who would sometimes, oh my God, like I'm having such a stressful day, and they'd rub my neck, and there was nothing sexual, nothing creepy. It's the intent. But so it's really hard because I don't want to go too far where you can't hug a colleague like, oh, my wife just had a baby. Mazel tov, you want to give them a big hug. But at the same time, you don't want some creepy guy touching you, and they used to feel that they had the right to. They probably still do.
Yeah,
But
and the
other
hard part
ladies,
is,
do you agree with
I
me?
suspect that those who you would identify as creepy guys would not self-identify as creepy guys, and so how do you kind
You're
of have
right.
norms? How do you have norms, around these kinds of things?
It's difficult. It's real. I guess it's also the relationship you have. I mean, with my colleagues, I was pretty friendly. With the boss, he was only the boss. I only saw him when he came in, went out. It was just, I don't know. Can other ladies comment, or you found that?
I think that right now I'm reading the book Caste. I don't know if anybody has read it. It's an unbelievable, captivating book about racism and casteism. But I go with the power, that often, maybe because I'm in that mode right now with this book, is that a lot of times touching is a play for power, as Lauren said. You can, sometimes you have to figure out when the person, I mean, it's being, the touching that might go on at a workplace between someone who is in the dominant caste, this is the language they use, versus the subordinate caste. It's a power play. I have the right, I have every right to touch you. So then it becomes something that, a taboo.
Yeah. And so, it's very interesting. So, if you look at I think what would be the typical generationally, the typical American white man in their 70s, I say white just because I don't know the culture of people of color in the same way, of white men in their 70s in America, it would be a Joe Biden type. Now, Biden, as you know, over the last decade, or
He's a
really
hugger.
last few years, some people loved it. This is a warm teddy bear. And some people are like, this guy's creepy. He's hugging everyone. He's touching them. And I wonder, like, how have you experienced that Joe Biden phenomenon of like a white man in their 70s and how he touches?
I would say, I think I used to work a lot with people quite a bit younger than myself. And I think there's so much, my youngest is trans. And I think that it's really different generationally, I find. And then, of course, it's all about being mindful. I think I didn't realize that there's a privilege with whiteness until really the last few years. And I think as an older white woman, I feel entitled to touch almost anybody I think I want to, because women aren't scary. And I had to realize lots of my youngest friends, they don't want to be touched. I mean, they've had bad experiences with touching. So I personally had, bad experiences as a child with being touched in an unwanted way. And I think that we just all have to be kind of mindful about reading the person around us and what they want, and having a sort of a awareness of like, is it okay if I hug you? To kind of, but I look at Biden and don't see any predatory. No, because I do think that
I agree.
People who felt that it was predatory at different points. And I do think you can read that, and that, and that intention is in the eyes or the movement or something about the person. But I do think it's very generational. And I was with a group of people once, my husband and I, we were in some room and with my youngest friends, and some woman all of a sudden said to him, "Don't you touch me." And we all looked at Mickey. Doesn't touch anybody. He never, he's just not a toucher. And I'm like, whoa, whatever she perceived happened it really freaked us out, because it was totally whatever was random in a room full of people. But her sensitivity was really high, because she's obviously been traumatized by touch. And the other person who's had really interesting things to say about this is I think Simone Biles. has talked a lot about it from her experience in gymnastics, but everyone wants to hug her, and how triggering that can be, and how she really has to have a boundary and kind of have to say to people, both, I can't talk about your trauma with you because it triggers me, and I can't always just be touched all the time. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Very interesting. Yes. So the trauma factor is really big in the power of touch. You know, something else I learned, there was a man I used to hug. And the first 2 times I hugged him, he was stiff like a rock. And I was like, oh, clearly this guy doesn't want to be hugged. And then the 3rd time I hugged him, he actually responded to it. And at first I was like, oh, this guy doesn't want to be hugged. And then I realized, like, no, this might have been, and I didn't know how to read it. This might actually be a person who didn't know how to hug and wasn't used to being hugged, and then kind of learned to be hugged. And so I'm constantly trying, I've been trying to adapt around this. And by the way, I want to raise the question around sexual orientation, around if any of you are gay, and how you experience this differently, or how as a straight person you might experience a hug with a gay person differently. So, like, for example, like I in some ways I feel like a deeper affection in hugging, and we could psychologically unpack this, but, and I wonder your experience, hugging someone who's gay than someone who's straight in some ways, because it feels like there's all these intense norms around being straight. But if I hug like if I hug a woman who's lesbian, it feels something feels very different there, or hugging a gay man. And so I wonder if that's a factor for you as well.
Yeah, I have several gay men who are close to me, and the hugs with them, there is no sexual underpinning. So it's a very easy type of hug. Whereas if you hug a heterosexual, there's always implicit a sexual underlying motive.
Yep. Great. Okay. Other thoughts folks have on this, or other related ideas, or unrelated?
Just to say, I don't think it's necessarily a sexual motive. I mean, I have a lot of male friends who are just friends, have always been friends, have been friends for decades. They're not gay, they're straight, and there's never been a problem with a hug. I mean, it's they even hugged me when I was married, and, you know, with my husband there's nothing sexual at all. I think men and women can be just friends, but definitely with a gay person, it's really easy.
Yeah. So what about the opposite? In the workplace, going back to Cheryl's idea of power, how do women use touch for power? And is that ever a concern?
I think I overused it. When I look back, I mean, there was one of my technicians he was a sweet guy who was a lot of fun, and he was funny and had a really curly hair. And I used to like do that to his hair. Now when I think of it, and then that was in the 90s. I think if I did that now, I'd be called in and you know, chewed out for it. So it's probably inappropriate. I mean, I think now if I were to hug anyone, I'd ask their permission first. But I'm also a touchy-feely person. So for me to just put my hand on someone's shoulder or say, you know, good work and good show. I used to do that, male or female. I'm retired now, so it's probably not an issue. Although when I was volunteering and before the time, I stopped now because of the pandemic, but you know, some of the guys would come in, I was friendly and they were my age, and you know, they just, you know, pat my shoulder just to say hello. No problem with it, but I wouldn't initiate with them.
Right. Okay. Cheryl was going to jump in, or Cheryl, then Eileen. Yeah.
I would have to disagree about the idea that men and women can be friends. Straight men and straight women, let's say, can be friends. Because there's always this look, you know, there's something, I mean, I have a friend who shares quite a bit of the same passions that I do for theater and things like that. And we used to go just he and I would go to the theater, because we love to go to the theater, we were just friends, we're friends as couples, but it just, now it's not looked on as something that is acceptable. Men and women can't be friends, that's the whole thing, that kind of thing. So, I mean, it all depends I think it all depends where you're coming from. Maybe they can be friends, but if these are friends as couples and you separate the couples and go off somewhere and do your own thing, it's difficult now. Everything has there's many more rules now as we're learning.
Interesting. Yeah, Eileen. Thank you, Cheryl.
When I was teaching, I found the use of touch to be very instrumental in controlling my class. And the troublemakers, which were teenage boys, I could usually control them by putting my hand on their shoulder. And if I walked around the room checking on what they were doing and just put my hand on their shoulder, they stopped. They didn't move. They didn't say a word. So from that perspective, it was fine. I understand today, if I were teaching, I could not do that.
Yeah. So, reflecting on, yes, Francine. Yes, Francine. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute still. Hey, AJ, can you help? Maybe unmute everyone.
Oh, I taught second grade, and somewhere in the middle of my career, they announced that we were no longer allowed to touch the children. Then the union would not protect us if we got sued. And I found that very difficult because second graders, all children, but the younger ones, sometimes came to school having had a very bad start to the day.
Yes.
And in the old days, you'd go over, you put your hand on the shoulder, you say, "Joey, you look so sad today."
Yeah.
We could go over and say, "Joey, you look so sad today," where you couldn't put your hand on the shoulder.
Wow.
And this is a quick anecdote. One of my Joeys came in one day and he always looked sad, but he looked even sadder. And I said, "Joey, you look so sad today. Did something happen to make you feel that way?" And it turned out that his mother's boyfriend had died of an overdose in their house during that night. And I thought, I don't care if they sue me. This kid needs a hug.
Yeah.
And so I broke the rules, but I understood the rules. I just didn't know why they couldn't be applied one on one rather than as a general rule.
Yeah, this is the challenge with rules in general. So thank you, Francine. Wow, how lucky those students were to have you as their teacher for so long. My daughter is a second grader, and in COVID, I've shared this before, but the teacher is wearing a mask and then a face shield and never leaves her desk. And there's a line drawn like 10 feet away from her desk, and you're not allowed to cross that line. It's almost like I would never say like a Darth Vader or something, but like there's this person up there, you never touch them, you never get close to them. They just stay at their desk and talk to you from a distance. You can't see those facial expressions. I mean, I think of her sitting there, and that's the relationship with a teacher who's supposed to be, at that age, affectionate and warm and connecting. So it's very, very difficult. So let me say something about contemporary Judaism and a trend around touch, because we might think of a certain Jewish traditions as being very touch oriented. Think about, like, if you saw, maybe you'd see this in some parts of Reform Judaism, you wouldn't see it in traditional Judaism. If you saw a circle of people holding hands praying, you would think they're Christians. Right? Jews don't usually pray in a circle holding hands, and nothing wrong with it. Beautiful to hold hands in a circle and pray. Maybe some Reform congregations will do that, but that's not normally how you think of traditional Jewish prayer. And yet, the power of touch in prayer. I often, when I'm praying the Amidah with my kids, I hold their hand. When we're davening, we'll hold hands together, and I love that. But we wouldn't do that in shul. That's not the normal protocol, in my experience. And so, in contemporary Judaism, for young Jews in particular, but there's kind of this new agey trend, very touchy Judaism. And I'll give you a few examples of what that looks like. and Nona knows about gardening. Gardening Judaism has this whole new reemergence of Judaism and its relationship to the earth. There's this whole wilderness Torah, if you've heard of wilderness Torah, that emerges, that Jews want to spend the holidays camping, right? They want to spend Pesach at a bonfire, Shavuot out in the woods, right? There's a return to slaughter that Jews don't want to, who keep kosher or don't keep kosher. They don't just want to buy the meat. They want to slaughter the animal. They want to touch the animal. They want to be in the experience of it, right? Of the earth, of the animal. They want to be out in the woods. There's this whole new, it also emerges not only in American Judaism, but in Israel, of being one with the land in Israel. And so we don't think of this as traditional Judaism, of kind of what we think of as sitting in the sanctuary, someone speaking up front and everyone else quiet. This is, let's go outside, let's be with the earth, let's make fire, let's be in the water. It's a very touchy, hands-on Judaism that doesn't look like, as they say, your grandparents' Judaism. And I wonder what parts of that resonate for you and which parts might resonate less.
Not the slaughtering. But I noticed that some of the younger people want to do things. They want to. It's almost like a living Judaism. It's not just a receiving. It's a it's a living Judaism. So some of the people that want to experience, let's walk across the desert. Let's have a hike in the desert because it's Pesach, because that's that kind of thing. I mean, still thinking a touch with the story. And the touch, a touch with the tradition, but just exercising it in a different manner than sitting around a table and telling the story. Yeah, doing it that way.
So Reb Zalman, who's really the founder of Renewal in many ways, and probably crossed some sexual boundaries inappropriately, and given its cultural context of the 60s and 70s, nonetheless, was very much promoting this new agey renewal Judaism, which is very, very touchy, very living, very hands-on. You never go to shul and just listen quietly for an hour or two. You're going to be very engaged physically and with other people, dancing and touching and interacting. And I think many find it appealing and many don't. But yeah, so let's hear from some others here.
My Reform temple is probably more aligned to participatory Judaism. We do not just sit at a service. Yeah. There's activities, which I think is good. I think participating in living Judaism is very helpful for making the religion meaningful in our lives.
Great. I know that resonates for many, most certainly young families who want to bring children, but not only them, many who really want to participate in those kind of ways. I see Reb Mark is writing on the side, Isabella Friedman Retreat Center. We have an annual Jewish men's retreat. 90 men spend Shabbat together, a lot of voluntary touch during Shabbat morning tefillah. Thank you, Rabbi Biller. Very interesting. And how do folks feel about all gendered spaces? Do you access spirituality and touch more positively in all women's retreats or all women's gatherings? Or how about all men's retreats? Is that different for folks who are straight or gay? Like, how do you experience all gendered spaces as liberating or confining?
I prefer all women's spaces. It's been a long time, but I had at one time gone on a women's Rosh Chodesh retreat for the Shabbat, and all women made it more comfortable. To be honest, I mean, I grew up as a modern Orthodox Jew, and if a man walks on our side of the Mechitza, I get pretty annoyed. Yeah, I really like having the separation.
Yeah, very nice.
Shmuly? Yeah. I think just going back to the actual synagogue experience, how things post-COVID, whenever that may be, are still going to be totally different. I mean, when this all first started, right before the lockdown, we were in shul, and but there was no touching of the Torah, which is a very significant part to people, you know, to touch the Torah as the Torah marches around and kiss the Torah and do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, that's going to go by the wayside for now once we actually are in person inside of our sanctuary again. So, I mean, at least for the near future, you know, I think certain things and certain activities, you can call that an activity, you know, the touching activities might, you know, what about just when, you know, when as you have an aliyah and you touch and kiss the Torah, I mean, all of those things are going to be put aside for at least for now. So
yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. You know, has anyone been to Catholic Mass in the last decade? When I was a child and I went with my Catholic grandmother to Catholic Mass, I can't remember if the priest put the little bread wafer into my mouth or into my hand. I think I recall it being open your mouth.
Yeah, they
And the
put it on your
placed
tongue.
it on your tongue, right? And are they still going to do that? Are they going to wear gloves? Or, you know, I mean, how does that work? Or at shul, you know, sometimes you cut a challah and all the kids come up. You give them you know, in some shuls, the kid even drinks from the same kiddush cup. I mean, most shuls now have those little plastic cups, right? And you pour a little 30 of them. But you cut a little challah, you start passing them out. I mean, how do we go back to that distribution of challah and kiddush? This is going to be complicated, or do we ever go back to that? You know, and you're right, touching the Torah, kissing the Torah. Yeah, these are very big questions.
Rabbi Shmuly?
Yes, hi, Eric.
Hi. So I've been finding this very fascinating of the notion of a live Judaism, but the notion about going back to the handing of the challah, I'd say if we really need to go safe route, let's just go the Sephardic route and you just throw the challah and avoiding the touching altogether. But that being said, I find the interpretation of a live Judaism to be fascinating because I've learned just, you know, I see myself kind of as a jack of all trades, or kind of like a chameleon. I've been able to dabble and blend into a lot of different forms of Judaism, and I've seen through different denominations of organizations and temples as that they have their own interpretation of how to do what we see as a live Judaism, and it is generation based, different by generation, but it's also by different denominations. Because I've done the men's retreats, I've done the gender equaling of the mingling of the retreats, and also different denominations. I find it very fascinating. There's different interpretations how it's done. And I think that is going to continue in this generation and the next generation, but it's going to continue to evolve in this case.
Yep. You know, so just to flesh out what Eric said at first, as you might not be aware, the general Ashkenazic minhag custom was it's disrespectful to throw challah. You place it on a board, you pass the plate around, whatever the case. But the Sephardic custom specifically, and you're shocked the first time you encounter it, is they literally throw the challah at you. You know, throw it at throw it. It's like, it almost feels like disrespectful or intense, but then you get used to it. And so Eric's point that maybe we should adopt the Sephardic custom of throwing. So, but yeah, your point around this denominationalism and beyond of interpretations. This to me is one of the top 10 most powerful dimensions of Jewish life. Our ability to interpret and reinterpret and reinvent, and have so many different models and access. I really feel bad in countries where people have access to one type of Judaism. You know, it's like there's one option more or less, and you take it or leave it. Or there's one of two extremes and nothing in the middle. You know, and so we're so fortunate to have different types. And even within denominations, looking at Phoenix, if you're Reform, you're going to get a very different feel of going to Temple Chai or Temple Solel or Beth Israel. Orthodox, if you're gonna go to Beth Beit Tefillah versus Ahavas Torah versus one of the Kollel. I mean, these are going to be totally different experiences, and even within the denominations. And then how amazing it is to enter trans-denominational experiences. One of the things I loved about Hillel, back in my Hillel days, and we probably all had this experience, was You're in your Reform minyan or your conservative minyan or your Orthodox minyan, and you hear the other ones in the room next door, you know, doing it very differently. And I've always thought that was such a beautiful model for what Jewish life could be, to having one building where you could enter different spaces. Or in Omaha, they have the monotheistic prayer center, where there's a mosque and a synagogue and a church in the same building, you know, and then they come together for Kiddush, right? They come together for a little food experience, a little snack experience after their prayer services, which is kind of cool. So, okay, friends, we're gonna have to pause here. I wish everyone a great day, not only a great day, but a very smooth day, a day of Memacheik, where we embrace the wonderful smoothness. We can all be smooth operators, and embrace the sensory experience of touch to enlighten our intellectual and emotional capacities. Have a great day. See you soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Happy Tu
Thanks.
B'Shvat, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Shmuly. Bye.